Expeditions Rome, a 2022 AA CRPG set in the classical time period. An impressive blend of exploration of civilizations, memorable companions, solid turn-based combat, and an immersive story. If you wish to only hear the conclusion of this review, you may skip towards the end of the video to the appropriately named section. For the rest of us, let us begin. The game looks stunning, especially considering its genre. The art style carries this, of which there are 5: Roman, Greek, Gallic, Berber, and Egyptian. A great deal of work has been put into details, whether it is equipment, vast locations, or architecture and statues that I cannot fully exhibit due to being on YouTube. The interesting part is, as far as I can tell, it is all historically authentic too. As with most CRPGs, this one also does not have a portrait for every single random NPC that you'll meet, however the important ones do have good portraits. The video quality is satisfactory, however animations are an issue sometimes. They're not lacking, but they are badly displayed. For example, in the main menu screen you see a column of Romans marching, and every single soldier has the exact same scrawny leg-ass animation. Yeah, it kinda looks unnatural. Overall, holds up for a CRPG. The cutscenes, on the other hand, have little movement. They are hand-drawn images with narration added. They are not used to depict magnificent moments or epic fights, but to paint a picture and set the mood, objective which they achieve. The UI has a bit of a Roman flair added to it, and it is functional and clean, which is arguably part of the Roman style. The hyperlink function is not present, where if you mouse over something, a lore pop-up with a detailed explanation of the term appears. However, there are tips during loading screens explaining a few things, as well as an expansive codex for both lore and game mechanics. I cannot tell you how important this is, because I'm an enthusiast regarding Roman history, so it did not bother me, but others could get lost in terminology, of which there is plenty, considering the Romans pretty much invented bureaucracy. The music is another part of the game that excels, usually staying in the background, never being a thing of its own. It does, however, build towards the intended atmosphere when playing, and it syncs well with the gameplay. Initially, I was expecting it to be just Roman themed. However, like with the models, there are different tracks for different areas and chapters. They are, in all likelihood, not actually representative of each culture, as I am sure the violin was not invented before crucifixions. However, they do sure trigger my little lizard brain into thinking so. The main theme is also pretty damn good. Sound effects are skillfully weaved into the game, whether it's the sounds of Roman legions marching accompanied by the clanking of steel, the calm forests of Gallia with soothing rivers, the hectic combats with swords clashing, spears and arrows. Furthermore, they are quite varied, depending, for example, if your hit lands successfully or is, say, blocked by an enemy shield. The quantity and seamless integration with gameplay makes for excellent, satisfying sound design. Now, I know in 2025 most of you are used to the quality of the most known CRPG, Baldur's Gate 3. However, most games in this category are not fully voiced due to constrictive budgets and insane amounts of dialogue. And as such, the developers of Expeditions Rome have taken upon themselves to fully voice act the entire thing. Wait, no, what? Yeah, every single line of text is voice acted. Every single basic soldier, even insignificant conversations between them talking about events, their personal lives, their accomplishments, and the general state of the Legion. More impressive perhaps, there is no varying quality. In a number of games you have excellent performances of the main characters and mediocre or downright bad from others. Here, even the accents and pronunciations are faithful depending on the country the characters originate. At least for Latin words, I do not have enough knowledge to speak for the rest. Everything here is of formidable quality, with extra attention to detail. For example, one of your companions was not raised in a Latin-speaking province, and initially her voice lines are cumbersome. Sometimes the meaning is to an extent misinterpreted due to misusing words. However, chapter by chapter, her linguistical skills improve. She begins using prepositions, conjugates verbs accurately, and learns words representing objects and customs that exist only in Roman culture. This character's voice acting has more personality and character development than actual characters in other games. Overall, some of the best voice acting I have seen and a massive boon to immersion. The story takes place in the era of the late Roman Republic. This game is not historically accurate, but it is historically authentic. meaning that regarding the timeline of events and their authors, plenty of artistic licensing is used. However, the aesthetics, government, traditions, law, society, and military structure are mostly accurate. This period of Rome is marked by multiple wars, social instability, the emergence of the Roman military as usually depicted in media, as well as political infighting due to an increasingly ineffective and corrupt Senate. The other thing that marks the majority of Roman history is the disease that grips Romans. One that to this day is still debated whether it is contracted at birth or later during life. The major symptom manifesting in the need to just gladius stab and tax the nearest barbarian tribe. To this day, there are claims that more lives have been cut short with the gladius than any other weapon. For you, it all starts with the murder of your father by Scaevola, who is trying to marry your sister to take over your family. Classic. Nothing better than murder, running for your life, and lasting psychological trauma in the name of character development. Your mother sends you away from Rome to protect you. Where? To an old friend of your father's, Lucullus, to serve as his military aide on that Greek island with that name that still makes most of you giggle, Lesbos. Spoiler alert, the remaining of the story section can be considered, well, spoilers. Please skip if that is a problem for you. You have until the end of the movie. You very quickly ascend to the rank of legate, leading an entire legion, while still under the command of Lucullus. This is not just a title. You have your own officers, recruit your Praetorians, and manage your camp. The enemy is Mithridates, that one guy in history that watched his father die to poison and therefore ended subjecting himself to so much of it that he became immune. See, the death of the father figure does indeed kickstart character development. Once you have dealt with the lesbians, the native people of the island of Lesbos, you will be running around in the open world map with your legion, fixing problems, besieging various cities, and negotiating truces. You can even try to poison Mithridates, which sees as much success as a Roman slave revolt. The second campaign is kickstarted by the death of Lucullus, which sees you thrown in the middle of a faction war in the Egyptian court, with Cleopatra fighting her brother and husband Ptolemy. Brother and their father probably played too much Crusader Kings, who is also named Ptolemy, by the way. Do not Google their family tree, please. Although writing the words Cleopatra and Ptolemy on paper and then hitting the print button an enthusiastic number of times achieves the same result. Your father's murderer is allied to Ptolemy, and therefore you are railroaded into allying with Cleopatra. In the end, you can remove her and help her allies, the Nasamanes, to power or install her as queen. The final chapter of the game sees the barbaric threat of the Gauls at war with Rome through a mini-sacking of the Eternal City itself, enabled by the brother of your enemy, namely Lurco. In a bid for power quite similar to something like Star Wars, where one creates a threat requiring the naming of a dictator in place of the two consuls, which is granted huge powers and oversight. Now, due to political intervention from yourself and other statesmen, the Senate also elects you to command legions to pacify the region. I'm sure even those of you less versed in Roman history are quite aware how Rome pacifies her enemies. The Gauls are mostly defeated by the divide and conquer tactic, being disconnected warring tribes. However, to a certain degree, so are you. The Roman army is divided between its two consuls, which are currently in an uneasy truce, to say the least. Unfortunately, you are forced to kill several of Lurco's men, a serious crime by Roman law. Eventually, however, all of Rome's enemies are brought to heel. Every chapter feels unique by varying the number of legions you control, the culture and motivations of your enemies, as well as your own. The only thing missing here would be a final chapter allowing for a proper Roman civil war, because really, the Romans' greatest enemies are the Romans. Yeah, these guys had some of the most bloody civil wars, and I mean bloody enough to make the French and their revolutions look like a paper cut. I mean, hell, you can enact decimation on your own legion as punishment. A Roman practice so brutal, we still use the word today. For those of you unaware, this is a method by which one soldier is picked at random out of 10, which then has to be killed by his own brothers in arms. Now, you might be wondering, why would you require 9 men to execute one? That is because killing enemies is about efficiency. Killing allies is about sending a message. Therefore, the tool with which this order would be carried out would be sticks, which would be done again and again and again until they would go through the entire legion. I have no idea how to transition from this, so the other part of the story is presented after each chapter, where you get to spend time in Rome itself, doing deals to manage your estate, helping your companions in their quests, engaging in Roman law, either trying to defend yourself or pursuing Scaevola. It truly does give this game flavor. More so, this game has some huge twists done right. From Cleopatra being betrayed by her allies, you realizing that Scaevola, who is now married to your sister, end up loving each other, and is not the real culprit behind the murders, but his brother, Lurco, against which he offers assistance. Nothing is sudden, the signs are always there, and you are being fed the bigger picture piecemeal. Military campaigns intertwine perfectly with intrigue, drama, and politics of the Roman world to create an interesting and enthralling story. Your decisions matter. They shape the world around you, decide the fate of characters and companions. You may choose to, for example, still kill Scaevola, despite now willing to help you against his brother. Consequences of your actions determine whether your sister or your mother survive, each having unique perspectives and insight regarding the story. You can also decide what happens to your enemies and their kingdoms. It all culminates in the last chapter, where you have two choices: either trust the Republic's ideals and face Lurco in the Senate, with particularly hard choices towards the end, or simply disillusioned with Roman law, failing to punish his many crimes and murders, and with the corruption in the Senate, you can march your armies over the Rubicon River into Rome in order to proclaim yourself emperor. The game has many endings and different outcomes for multiple civilizations and characters, and the entire story is a recreation of mostly Caesar's exploits as well as other renowned Roman characters such as Sulla. This guy had some name. And the game is pretty on the nose about it too, letting you meet a young Caesar while being attacked by pirates, as he famously was, only to see him get killed early in the game, allowing you to take his place. There are also plenty of moral dilemmas in the game, forcing you to choose between yourself and your ideals, which are mostly modeled after Roman subjects of the time regarding the virtues of a good man. Your companions are quite interesting, from the freed gladiator Bestia that ends up learning philosophy, to the more stereotypical ones such as the veteran centurion Aquilinus and the Pancratian fighter and Greek philosopher Cinyras, who ends up being Bestia's tutor. Furthermore, these characters have real development. They learn new things, change the way they talk and interact with each other, even behind the scenes, while you see the results. All of them have funny and interesting lines and ideals, and mostly behave like their own person. This is by far one of the strongest parts of the game. You only have 5 story companions, however, and the party size is that of 6, including yourself. Most CRPGs usually have more than this. However, I prefer this decrease in quantity for the sake of immense quality. There are also a good few historical figures in the game, such as Cato and Cicero, or Titus Pullo and Lucius Vorenus as recruitable centurions, a Rome HBO Easter egg, as well as a couple of interesting side characters such as Rhea, an Egyptian priestess of a temple dedicated to cats, as one does in ancient Egypt. There are 4 companions with romance paths, all mutually exclusive, as well as 2 more characters that do not lock you out. And for the many of you wondering, yeah, Cleopatra is one of these choices, with the whole arriving wrapped up in a carpet unannounced like she actually did historically. Just not naked this time around, sadly. The character creation has a little quirk. You choose your name, gender, which by the way matters, portrait, and physical characteristics. Then you decide on a rhetorical style. In this game you do not have dialogue checks that leave you locked out of your preferred type of actions and endings due to the fact that you have just not allocated the required amount of persuasion points according to the wiki or failed a dice roll. Instead, you choose a style that is modeled after Roman philosophy and roleplay that. You'll be able to add another one at a later date. It will open new paths in quests and make some things easier. However, it is not a requirement to finish any quest and does not have an impact on the ending. The next choice is one between the 4 difficulty presets. Furthermore, there are some settings added later due to public demand, most likely, regarding removal of managing non-story NPCs and the generic missions involving them. Only the difficulty can be changed at a later date and customized properly. Did you notice anything missing, by the way? No class selection. Yet. After finishing a bit of dialogue and the first combat encounter, you get to pick your class, possibly to have a better understanding of what the classes actually do. You have 5 mostly generic choices: a classic sword and board that can wear heavy armor, the Princeps. He can focus on tanking, disabling, and demoralizing enemies. The dual-wielding melee glass cannon, the Veles, that has mobility options and different types of damage distribution. Sagittarius, the guy with the bow. His talent tree focuses on the range he has available, from long range all the way to including melee attacks in his build. The versatile Triarius has an extra tile worth of range, can wear decent armor, has heals, buffs, debuffs, damage, armor shredding, and more. The final DLC-only class, the Gladiator, is a bruiser. He can tank rather well while still outputting decent amounts of damage. He has access to a wider variety of armor and weapons, including some specific to his class. His tree focuses on positioning, morale, and returning damage. The subclasses are not mutually exclusive in this game, so you can pick, choose, and build your classes to your heart's content. A simplest character design that combines and turns into a quite complex one. While up to 6 skills are determined by your class, 3 more are consumables, and another 3 from the varying combinations of your main and offhand weapons. There are also armors and trinkets in this game, giving other stats as well as unique versions of all the previously mentioned items. A thing to note is that pretty much all companions have a unique armor for them. There is also a crafting system in the game, which fills slots or upgrades existing items in order to keep up with the newer ones, adding stats, skills, changing visuals, and generally improving them. This is surprisingly extended to unique items. There's quite a number of models here. I mean, sure, swords are swords, but there are multiple types of Roman gladiuses or Egyptian kopeshes, which, while historical, they honestly look like something designed by an over-enthusiastic farmer. Furthermore, you have water and food, crafting materials, legion morale, and soldiers to care for. Your legion cap is an actual place you can visit and truly feels like a living, breathing thing with its own structure, progression, centurions, and prefects. Moreover, it allows for customizations regarding colors and standards. This plethora of options in crafting, equipping, and using gear, the dynamic trading system, and the maintenance of your legion makes for a robust, functional system. The 3 maps in the game are quite big. They allow for plenty of exploration and conquering, taking over cities, making camps, or taking resources to upgrade your legion. Also, you and your legion are 2 separate entities that can be commanded independently. You may leave to do a quest while your legion conquers a new place or fights off a new enemy attack. In-game locations also seem to be quite well done with different styles and interesting features. Actual combat feels tactical, for the lack of a better word. It is classic turn-based CRPG combat where you have 1 movement point and 1 action point, which can be used for movement again, armor and range, stuns and heals. However, it all feels so well balanced that I never ended up spamming one ability or tactic. I had to constantly adapt to the environment and use teamwork and positioning to overcome the challenge. On top of that, by removing dodge chance, planning is far easier and more important as well. The usable items on the ground, the terrain hazards, and the different map layouts force me to constantly pay attention to overall deployment. The variety and extreme differences in enemy stats forces you to understand them and treat them accordingly. Even when the enemy is hard to kill, it is not so because they have a large health pool, but because they have a large portion of damage reduced due to certain mechanics that you have to execute. The variety in objectives helps here, especially in the bigger battles at the end of each chapter, where, for example, you may choose to destroy more catapults in order to lessen the barrages of your other troops. However, this leads to you fighting an increasing number of enemies, which do not require to be killed. The combat is usually the weaker aspect in CRPGs or TRPGs, being an unnecessarily convoluted and annoying system with weirdly named stats that usually don't feel good. Combat in Expeditions Rome is quite easy to comprehend while retaining more complex systems to master. The difficulty settings allows for fine-tuning while the highest difficulty provides challenging combat. The overall balance further incentivizes players to interact with all systems instead of spamming a single ability. The few aspects that the community did not like can be removed entirely. One of the better designed and satisfying turn-based combat games I have seen, with decent options regarding customization. The AI also appears to be functional. It understands most game mechanics such as cover and proper positioning, while also avoiding debuffing zones such as fire. And while not capable of the advertised sentience, it seems capable of utilizing advanced tactics, like focusing weaker characters without taking unnecessary risks, such as going through 10 attacks of opportunity. They can also prioritize damage or survivability depending on their HP, situation, and class. Overall, efforts have been made to build a competent AI that has the potential to challenge the player. Every game in this genre has one quirky mechanic besides combat, like space battles for Rogue Trader, and this is no exception. Your Legion actually fights, but it is a rather simplest choose your card system, based mostly on your Legion stats and upgrades versus that of your enemies. A rather short and forgettable experience that only serves to make your Legion feel more than just a paper statistic. As far as performance goes, the game runs smoothly with minimal loading screens and is not resource intensive. I have not encountered any bugs during either playthroughs, which considering the size of the game is quite impressive. There's also controller support, which runs quite well. Regarding options, combat speed might need to be cranked up to 2, especially in the bigger battles. You may want to disable auto-continue dialogue, but since it is all fully voice acted, it might not matter much. Also, the toggle highlights hotkey is Alt, which you may wish to change due to Alt-Tab. The game has one DLC, Death and Glory, and will not receive any other. It features a new class, the Gladiator, available for yourself, as well as changing Denira, a Scythian companion, to it. And considering you have two Princeps, her old class, in your party, as well as the old Gladiator making much more sense lore-wise, it is a welcome optional change. To be clear, the companion and all of its content are part of the base game, only her class changed with the DLC. Furthermore, it adds a few new arenas that are paced accordingly through the chapters. The battles themselves are interesting. You pretty much accumulate Crowd Good Boy points by doing certain actions, usually including killing or damaging enemies, as well as conditions to lose said points, presented sometimes in the form of using consumables or even moving. Arenas feel like they have an extra puzzle layer on top of the fights that need to be handled and is an interesting approach. You may access these type of fights through the main menu directly. The last patch as of writing this is 106, which landed on November 2024. The game seems to be receiving some balance and quality of life changes, of which more may come. However, no major changes have been made in some time, nor are expected. The game is in a finished state and no new content is promised. In conclusion, Expeditions Rome is an excellent quality CRPG following a classic and basic formula. It places you in command of a legion and at the forefront of Roman politics. Both the main story and that of other characters are captivating through great writing and full voice acting. Player agency makes its presence felt through multiple choices with significant repercussions and multiple endings. The gameplay and combat feel satisfying to engage with and victories feel rewarding and earned. The game stands at 88% user reviews and it does so for a reason. It is the only CRPG that I can recommend to anyone, regardless of whether they are a fan of the genre, as it is easy to get into and it is of outstanding quality. Moreover, the issues that plague most other CRPGs are not present here, namely bad combat, lack of voiceovers, and bugs. The game is priced at €45 with a €10 DLC, going for as low as 15 and €3 respectively during sales, which seem to be featured regularly. The game time for this is up to 60 hours on higher difficulty completion runs and 40 on normal runs. There is also a demo which is quite good as it seems to end after you gain command of your legion, allowing you to sample most of the game's mechanics. That is all about this game. Happy grazing until the next video.
Old man. He's dead. Lurko, I shall skin your back and lay you on salt. I shall feed your...
Okay, I swear most of the dialogue is a little bit more nuanced than this.